InStitches show. It is Calendar Blanket Friday. It is August, and that means it is time for the 8th installment in our 2024 Calendar Blanket Granny's Magical Cupboard. We are making 12 unique granny squares this year, one per month. You can make as many of them or as few of them as you like. You can arrange them in any order that you please, and you can join them any way you want. We started joining in June. I'm using the ladder stitch to put my squares together this year, so if you want to join your squares using that method, you can, and we have a video on that down below. But let's talk about our 8th granny square. We are going to get breezy. It is hot out there. It's August. We are entering the dog days of summer, as they say. So this month we are going to be making a mesh granny square. Now we do have a tutorial for a mesh granny square on the channel, but it's definitely different than this one. I'm going to call this one the summer mesh granny square just to differentiate between the two. This one has a stitch count that makes it work with the rest of the squares in this particular series, and it's a denser mesh. It is a little more tightly put together. It starts out a little bit different, and to be perfectly honest, I feel like it's an easier, more improved version than the other mesh square we've got. Now, you might find that this square sizes up a little smaller than some of the other squares in this series, even though it's all the same stitch count per side, per row. So if you want, you can use a larger hook, slightly larger than the one you usually use for this. But rest assured, mesh stitch is very stretchy, so when you block it out or you attach it to the rest of the squares and you block your entire project at the end, it will size up very comfortably to meet the rest of them. So you don't have to change your hook if you don't want to. But I do know that sometimes when we are working on these squares, some of you get a little worried if you see one square getting really, really big or really, really small, and it's not you, it's just the pattern. Patterns all work a little differently. So you can do this square in any set of colors as you like, typical to the rest of the squares in this series. This one looks really cool in all one color. I did this one in 2 colors in a sort of a color blocking concept. The first 3 rows are blue, the last 3 rows are gold, but today I'm going to use my usual light blue, yellow, and white, and I've done it with a color change every single row. It is really, really easy. It's hot. We don't want to have to tax our brains. This one is so brainless. All you really need to do is mark out those chain 2 corners, so you keep track of your corner spaces so you don't confuse them with the other spaces in this meshy pattern, and you just double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and that is pretty much all you're doing for most of this square. So let's grab our hooks, we'll grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up a summery mesh granny square together. In order to make this granny square, you will need around 40 yards of yarn. I'm using a size 4 medium weight acrylic. If you're using more than one color, then you're just going to need to redistribute that amount of yardage over the different colors. So 2 colors around 20 yards each, 3 colors around 15 yards each, etc. You're going to want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle. I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook, also known as an eye or a 9, and some stitch markers will be helpful for this pattern, so you can help keep track of your chain 2 corner spaces and not confuse them with the other spaces in this very meshy granny. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. This month's granny begins like so many other granny squares. We are going to start with a slip knot on our hook, chain 5, and join with a slip stitch to the first chain to make a ring. The first row of this granny square is also like a classic granny square. We're going to chain 3 to begin. This chain 3 will count as a double crochet. 2 more double crochet into that chained ring. Chain 2, that becomes our first corner, and then you're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, chain 2, so that you have 4 sets of 3 double crochets or 4 shells and 4 chain 2 spaces all the way around that little chained ring. At the end of row 1, you'll have 4 sets of 3 double crochet or 4 shells. That's the common phrase for them. We're not really using shells though in this pattern, so I'm just going to refer to them as double crochets for now. And you've got 4 chain 2 corner spaces. Don't forget that last chain 2. Find the top of the chain 3 that began the whole row and slip stitch to join. If you are changing colors, like me, you can fasten off. If you are not changing colors, just pause. We are all going to start in the same place, which is the top of this chain 3, right where we joined the row. If you're changing colors, you can work over top of your short tails or leave them out and weave them in later. Sometimes I like to just weave them through a few of these stitches and get them to the corner space where I end up putting in a corner. And we're going to grab our stitch markers and have them handy because we're going to start using them in round 2 or row 2 of this square. I'm going to grab my next color, which is going to be white. If you're not changing colors, you're still paused at the slip stitch join at the end of row 1, which is the top of that chain 3. If you are changing colors, you fastened off, you're going to join your new color in the same place that you fastened off. So right there in the top of that chain 3, so we're all in the same place. We are not starting in corners for this particular pattern. You could, but it's just easier to do it this way. So right from where we are in the top of the chain 3 that closed last row, we're going to begin with a chain 4. So this is where the pattern deviates from the classic granny square. The chain 4 at the beginning of every row going forward counts as a double crochet, chain 1. Skip the next stitch and double crochet into the stitch after that. Chain 1. Into the chain 2's corner space, we're going to work double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet. So the corners for this particular granny square, they always have a chain 2 corner space, but you're only working 1 double crochet on either side of it. So the corners, the corner treatment, as I like to call it, for every single corner and every row of this pattern going forward is double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. That's what goes in the corner spaces. You might want to start using your clips now to mark those chain 2 corner spaces just so you don't confuse them with all of the chain 1 spaces all around the rest of your square. And here we go. We will chain 1. So after you finish your corner, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. We're going to do a double crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, so that little middle stitch from the previous row, you're going to skip it and double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, and into that corner, you're going to work the new corner treatment for this square, which is double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. So we set ourselves up for the next side with that chain 1. We're going to put our little stitch marker here in on the chain 2 corner space, just so those chain 2 corner spaces do not get confused with all the other spaces here. And here we go. Into the next stitch, we're going to work double crochet and chain 1. Skip the next stitch, double crochet, chain 1 into that next stitch. That brings us to the corner, and we do the new corner treatment, which is double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Let's mark that chain 2 corner. So we've got 3 corners made now. And here we go for our last side. Into the next stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip that middle stitch, double crochet, chain 1 into the next stitch. That brings us to the last corner space, and we work double crochet, chain 2, you need that new corner, double crochet, all into the same corner space, and chain 1. That brings you all the way back to that chain 4 that began the row. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to find the third chain, because that would be the top of a double crochet, and you're going to join with a slip stitch. Let's put our stitch marker into that chain 2 corner. I'm just going to pull up on that loop. Now the row 2 is sort of the first row that gets you comfortable with this meshy pattern. Every other row after this is pretty much identical. So row 3, row 4, row 5, row 6, you're going to see that pattern appearing. It will be much easier to follow. You don't have to worry about skipping stitches. You're just sort of concerning yourself with every double crochet you see and those all important chain 2 corner spaces. If you're changing colors, then you're going to do what you did in the previous row. We've just joined to the 3rd chain of that chain 4. You can fasten off. If you're not changing colors, just stay put. We're all going to start in the same place, which is the 3rd chain of that chain 4, or what would kind of be the top of a double crochet if this was a regular double crochet chain 1. You can weave in your little tails or work over top of them later, whatever your little heart desires. And I'm going to grab my 3rd color, which is my blue. If you're changing colors, you start with a slip knot on your hook. You're going to join with a slip stitch in that 3rd chain, the same place that you fastened off. If you're not changing colors, you're just waiting. And here we go. We begin with a chain 4. The chain 4 at the beginning of every row of this pattern counts as a double crochet chain 1. Skip all chain 1 spaces. Look instead for the next double crochet stitch, and into the top of that stitch work a double crochet chain 1. So in your brain, every time you see a regular double crochet, know that you're going to be working into the top of it. You will be working a double crochet chain 1 into the top of every single double crochet stitch you see. When you get to the last double crochet stitch in the row that was part of the previous row's corner, this is another reason you want to have your stitch markers handy. Don't ignore it, don't confuse it, just treat it like a double crochet stitch, and into the top of it work a double crochet chain 1. So if you see a double crochet stitch, you work a double crochet chain 1 into it, no exceptions. Take out that corner marker. I know that I'm standing in a chain 2 corner space, and the corner space gets the meshy corner space treatment. Double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. That little chain 1 sets us up for the beginning of the next side. It's very highly recommended that you put your stitch marker back in that chain 2 space so you can keep track of it. You can see it gets very meshy very quickly here. And now I'm staring at 4 double crochets all worked across that last side from the previous row. Every single double crochet gets double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. Every row, every side, no exceptions. If you see a double crochet stitch, you work a double crochet chain 1 into it. You're skipping all the chain 1 spaces, but that's okay because you're creating a new chain 1 space directly above it. So this mesh, this lattice that we're creating, is double crochets sitting directly on top of each other and chain 1 spaces sitting directly on top of each other. So if you see a double crochet stitch, you work double crochet chain 1 into it, no exceptions. When you get to your marked corner space, that's a chain 2 corner space, it gets the corner treatment. Double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. That chain 1 sets us up for the next square or the next side. Put your stitch marker back in your corner. Find the next double crochet, it gets double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 1. That brings you up to the next corner space, and into the corner space you work double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Put that stitch marker back in. And now we're looking at the last full side. Same thing. every double crochet stitch gets double crochet, chain 1, all the way across. It's really nice and brainless. You get to your corner space, it's marked with a stitch marker. Corner space gets double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. Now, every row going forward, you're going to find that you're moving further and further back from the corner. So double check that you don't miss any previous row's double crochet stitches. So if it's a double crochet stitch, it gets double crochet and chain 1. And then once you're back to the chain 4 that began the row, whether you changed color or not, count up to the 3rd chain and join with a slip stitch. If you're changing colors, you just continue right from there. If you, if you're not changing colors, you just continue with a chain 4 and then double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. If you are changing colors, then you just take a moment, lay it flat, snip your yarn, fasten off, and grab your new color and join in the exact same place that you just fastened off in. Let's talk row counts for each side. So as you know by now, if you've made any of the other granny squares in this collection, every single side and every single row has the exact same number of stitches, however those stitches may be made up. So at the end of row 3, each side had 3 stitches across it for a total of 12 all the way around. But more importantly, think about it per side. You had 3 stitches per side, and then of course your chain 2 corners, just the chain 2s, we don't count them because the chain 2 corner space is consistent throughout. So each side had 3 stitches in row 1. At the end of row 2, you know you have to have 7 stitches, and that consists of the double crochet, the chain, the double crochet, the chain, the double crochet, the chain, the double crochet. Every row side can be counted as a double crochet, chain, etc., etc., etc. It will end with a double crochet. So it'll begin with a double crochet, it'll end with a double crochet. Your chain 2 corners aren't counted. So at the end of row 2, each side would have 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At the end of row 3, each side would have 11 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Row 4, each side will have 15 stitches in exactly the same setup. It begins with a double crochet, it ends with a double crochet. There are chain 1s in between every double crochet all the way across. So 15 stitches from corner to corner. Chain 2 corners are on either side of that. After row 4, you'll have row 5. Row 5 will have 19 stitches across. And at the end of row 6, each side will have 23 stitches across. Same setup, double crochet, chain 1, etc., 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 ending with a double crochet. So it begins and ends with a double crochet. You've got chain 2 corners on every side. I highly recommend using these little guys as you go forward because it really does help keep track of those chain 2 corners and delineates them from the chain 1 spaces in between all of those double crochets. Let's get row 4 going. If you didn't change color, you're sitting right here. If you are changing color, you're going to join with your new color in the same place. So it doesn't matter that we're just in the middle of the row. This is one of those fun kind of patterns that doesn't really matter where you start, but you might as well just start where you finish the last row. Chain 4 to begin. Every row begins with a chain 4. That counts as a double crochet, chain 1. If you're looking at a double crochet stitch, you work a double crochet, chain 1 into it. No exceptions. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. Like I said, don't be confused by getting up to that double crochet that's right at the corner. The corner space marked by our stitch marker, remove it. Into the corner space, you work double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. Put your stitch marker back. I highly recommend it. And then it's just the same thing all the way around for row 4. If you see a double crochet, you work double crochet, chain 1 into it. 0 exceptions. The corner gets the mesh corner treatment, which is double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Don't forget that chain 1. And then you work all the way across and you're just repeating the same little thing. Each side of row 4 will have 15 stitches. Double crochet, chain 1, etc., 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 ending with a double crochet in that chain 2 space before you start with the chain 2. So don't get bogged down by the specifics. Just work a double crochet, chain 1 into every single double crochet stitch you see. When you get to the chain 2 corner, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Don't forget that chain 1. The all-important chain 1. I'm going to let you work away at that all the way around row 4, and at the end of row 4, we'll be joining to the top of the chain 3, the third chain of the chain 4 that began the row, just like all the previous rows. We'll be right in the middle of the side that we started in, so make sure when you finish that last corner that you don't miss any double crochet stitches, and we will count them up. Make sure we've got the right stitch count. We find ourselves back at the beginning. After you finish that last corner, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1, you had 2 more stitches left. So of course they got double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. That brings you back to the chain 4 that began the row. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Find the third chain. You're going to join with a slip stitch to it. If you're not changing colors, you just stay put, or you can start continuing with row 5, because I bet you know the drill by now. If you are changing colors, you can fasten off and join your new color in the top of the same place that you just fastened off. I like to lay it down at the end of every row, whether I'm changing colors or not, and just pull out those beautiful corner spaces. I'm looking for those chain 2s. They're marked by my corner stitch markers, so I know where they are and I'm not accidentally pulling it out of shape. And let's just talk quick stitch count. At the end of row 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, each side should have 15 stitches across it. Ignore your chain 2s, which is the corners. You've got a double crochet, chain 1 to begin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You begin with a double crochet, you end with a double crochet. You've got chain 1 spaces in between. 15 stitches across each side, not including your chain 2 corner spaces. And I'm going to change colors. If you're not changing colors, or you are, you know the drill. I'll see you at the beginning for row 5. Row 5, we're all starting in the top of that chain 3, or the third chain of the chain 4 that began the previous row, or the other way you can look at it is the place you fastened off. So whether you didn't change colors, you're sitting there. If you did change colors, you should be there now. We chain 4 to begin the row. Every row begins with a chain 4. That counts as your double crochet, chain 1, and now it's the same old. You're looking for the next double crochet stitch. You work a double crochet, chain 1 into it. Double crochet, chain 1 into every single double crochet stitch, no exceptions, all the way around. Remember, don't be thrown off by that last double crochet in the row. It still gets double crochet, chain 1, and then you work into your corner. Chain 2 corner gets double crochet, chain 2, that's the new corner, double crochet, chain 1. That sets you up for the next side, and then it's just looking for the next double crochet. Every single double crochet gets double crochet, chain 1. Do not skip any double crochets. Just work at an even pace. It's very tempting to get flying with this particular pattern, so make sure when you're coming out of a corner you don't miss the first double crochet stitch. It'll be this guy, right? It's the corner stitch from the row previous. Don't miss it. When you're going into a corner, don't forget that this double crochet, which is the stitch of the corner from the row previous, gets double crochet, chain 1, because the stitch marker tells you that you're working double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. That's another reason it's helpful to use those stitch markers. They're kind of like a brain reminder. I guess a reminder is basically your brain, but maybe a physical reminder. I'm trying to think of something that makes sense. Anyway, if it's a double crochet, don't miss it. Make sure it gets a double crochet, chain 1 all its own. And when you get to the corners, that stitch marker tells you it's time to do double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and a chain 1. make sure you put that stitch marker back in on that chain 2 so you don't confuse it. And at the end of row 5, you'll have 19 stitches all the way across. It begins with this double crochet. You count all those chains in between. It ends with this double crochet, the new double crochet that's sitting in the corner. You don't count your chain 2 corners because they're consistent throughout. You're only concerning yourself with the double crochets and chain 1s all the way across each side. You'll have 19 across each side. I'll let you finish row 5. I'll catch up with you at the end. At the end of row 5, you'll be finishing with a double crochet, chain 1, just before you get back to that chain 4 that began the row. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 chains. Find the third, join with a slip stitch, and if you are not changing colors, you can start row 6 right from where you are. If you are changing colors, fasten off, join your new color with in the same place that you fastened off with a slip stitch, and we'll get going on row 6. Lovely simple pattern. I'm joining my new color, the last color for row 6, with a slip stitch in that third chain of the chain 4 from the previous row. It's the same place that I just fastened off, and we begin with chain 4. Chain 4 counts as a double crochet, chain 1, and it's the same thing. Double crochet, chain 1 into every single previous row's double crochet, no exceptions. When you get to the chain 2 corner space, I've got my stitch marker there. That reminds me that I work a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Put my stitch marker back in just to keep that corner nice and obvious, and off I go. Don't miss the first stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1 into every single double crochet from the previous row. Every double crochet sits on top of the double crochets from the row before. Every chain 1 space sits on top of the chain 1 space from the row before. Corners get the same treatment no matter what row you're on. Double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Join with a slip stitch in the third chain of the chain 4 that began the row. I'll see you back there. At the end of row 6, you're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that third chain of the chain 4, I should say. I've got all my little tails here. I'm going to show you how to weave those in a moment. 1, 2, 3, there's the third chain, and slip stitch to join. Now, if you're making yours larger, and this is one of those granny squares that can infinitely size up, you just continue with the pattern. Right from where you are, chain 4, that counts as a double crochet, chain 1, and continue. Every double crochet gets double crochet, chain 1. The marked corners, the chain 2 corners, get double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Always join on the third chain of the chain 4, and you can change colors. You can make every row a different color if you want. You can do multiple rows of the same color. You can make the whole thing in one color if you like. Very flexible pattern. Okay, when you're ready to fasten off, because you're done, you can do just that. You've joined, fasten off, and now you've got all these little tails that you want to weave in. I've been weaving in a few of mine as I go. I'm going to take my stitch markers out now. I'm all done with them. This square will block up nice and neatly. So if you want to block this up because it's a bit short before you join them to your other squares, you can do that. Or if you're like me and you just like to join before you do any blocking, you can do that too. I will look for a tail that is relatively near the bottom of a stitch. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to weave this tail. I'm going to take my needle and I'm weaving it underneath some of the loops of previous color from the previous row, but we're at the back. We're on the other side. So they're not going to show. And I'm going to go right into the corner there. Grab that little tail and pull it through. Now, if you've got tails that tend to want to unravel on you, then you can weave them back and forth. Cut longer tails, weave them back and forth. I don't have a problem with my tails typically coming out. So that's why you see me cut shorter tails, but I know some people like to cut longer tails. I'm going to weave my other color, the blue tail that is in the same place, back through the same places. But like I say, if you have trouble with tails coming out, cut longer tails and just go back and forth as many times as you need to. I tend to crochet a little on the tight side, so that's probably why my little tails don't come out. And then if you have anything kind of left over, you can just give it a trim. And then the same thing. I'm going to take both this yellow and this white tail and weave them in underneath these stitches and loops. And that will make a nice, neat, and tidy looking square from the front. And there you go, a summer mesh granny square. It is new, it is improved, and it suits the rest of the squares in this series, most importantly. If you've made both our original mesh granny square, which we'll link down below in case you want to see it, and if you've made now this one, I'd like to know how you feel the two compare. Do you think there is a tremendous application difference between the two? Personally, I feel the original mesh granny square has the spaces are much larger in between the double crochets, so it's much more breezy, much more open. I like this one, I think, a little bit more because it's not quite as open and loose feeling, I guess. I feel like there's more you could do with this one. I like those smaller spaces in between the double crochets, but I'd like to know your opinion as well. And also, I feel, since this is one of those squares that can infinitely size up, that it would make a really great base for a top. You know, a typical granny square top where you make just a couple of big granny squares, one for the front, one for the back, and then maybe add a couple of straps or some sleeves or something. I feel like this one would make a really great summer top because it's breezy, it's not too holey, and it wouldn't necessarily look like a granny square. It would just look like you'd created yourself a mesh top. So I'm thinking I might give that a try. We shall see. There's so many things on my I want to try that list that it pretty much rolls right off the table, out the window, and down the front lawn at this point. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed making that along with us this week, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches Show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a wonderful week. Bye, guys.
Hi, everybody. Mr. and Stitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.